A steady wave of cybersecurity attacks targeting businesses and impacting customers.
We're actually in the middle of a cyber war. And what makes it a cyber war is that these attacks are taking place against things that impact our everyday lives.
So what's being done? We speak to a key player in Congress when it comes to cybersecurity about work underway now to protect against the next attack. Health insurance companies questioning what your doctor recommends and threatening not to pay. How a new Texas law could change the equation for patients. And an emphasis on education as lawmakers begin the special session.
We're seeing more effort to meddle politically in our classrooms and to have a say politically what happens rather than letting us be honest in our teaching.
Why the agenda at the Capitol is getting mixed reviews from Texas teachers.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Lawmakers are back to work at the Texas Capitol. On the agenda, 11 items announced by Governor Greg Abbott. Most are controversial conservative priorities, things like an overhaul of election rules, border security, banning transgender students from playing girls' sports, and restricting what students can learn about the role of racism in U.S. history. Education is the topic with the most items on the agenda, but teachers have mixed opinions about what's on the call. Wes Rappaport takes an in-depth look.
The special session call is heavy with hot-button issues, but it's education legislation that's spread out across the governor's list. All bills that lawmakers attempted but failed to pass during regular session. Governor Abbott wants lawmakers to take another crack at a bill he vetoed to require family violence prevention education in middle and high school. And he wants legislators to add a 13th check to the monthly payouts for retired teachers. Also on his list, a bill to require transgender student athletes to participate in sports based on their biological sex, and legislation to strengthen the bill aimed at banning critical race theory. What does that say about the state's influence in the classroom right now?
We spend more money on education than we do anything else, so it is a top priority.
House Speaker Dade Phelan says he's not surprised education is taking a front seat, even though educators did not ask for all of those agenda items. Amarillo ISD elementary school teacher Aaron Phillips supports the 13-check plan, but says the rest of the education issues missed the mark.
We're seeing more effort to meddle politically in our classrooms and to have a say politically what happens rather than letting us be honest in our teaching.
Texas Democrats argue there are other, more pressing priorities.
We need to come back and focus on concrete bread and butter issues like access to health care, learning disruptions our students have faced, and making sure our grid is reliable and efficient.
Phelan says his chamber is ready to tackle Abbott's assignments.
I think we have our plate full.
I'm Wes Rappaport for State of Texas.
One of the things that people are watching for is how Republicans and Democrats are going to be able to work together. Wes spoke one-on-one with House Speaker Dade Phelan to get insight on the plan to make that happen.
But I guess my question is, what is preventing Democrats from walking out again? And furthermore, what was your level of involvement to make sure that Democrats would show up for a special session?
Sure, and I've been talking to Democratic and Republican colleagues since Sonny died, since the day we left here in June. Many are eager to get back to work. Many have asked the governor, for instance, to add things to the call, like CPS and foster care reform, and add additional resources to that. We're seeing a skyrocketing CPS child removals as children go back to school and teachers are seeing them for the first time following this pandemic, and the caseworkers are going out into the homes and seeing these young men and women and children in Texas. And the child removals, they're skyrocketing. Sleeping in CPS offices is through the roof. It's called Operation Child Watch. It's occurring across the state of Texas. That is a crisis we need to handle. We're seeing property tax appraisals are hitting mailboxes, and it's sticker shock, and people feel like they're renting their home from the government even after they paid it off from the bank. And now we have $7.5 billion in the state coffers. We have these federal dollars that judges now say we can use for tax relief. Those are real issues that Texans talk about at the breakfast table and at the dinner table. They talk about their tax bill. They talk about education. And so I'm not surprised we're back here talking about issues that Democrats care about too. There's a bill vetoed by the governor dealing with dating violence. It was a Democrat House member, a Democrat senator passed it, and he gave specific ways to change that bill to make certain that he wouldn't veto it again. And that will be, that's on the call, and that will be something we'll discuss going forward. So I think there's a lot of issues here. Article 10 is something that's near and dear to all, members that we want to make sure our staff is paid after September 1st. And so that's something that's going to, when we get to the governor's desk, he'll decide when he signs the next reiteration of Article 10. But I'm assuming he expects some of his other priority items to make it to his desk as well. So I have really good discussions with, specifically Democratic colleagues, asking them to fulfill their constitutional duties, to show up, fight for your districts, get some meaningful reforms done to issues that are near and dear to their heart as well.
Do you have a plan if there's a repeat?
My Democratic colleagues have been quoted saying that, all options are on the table. I respectfully, all options are on the table, for myself as well. I'm going to be willing to work with them throughout this special session to make certain that some of the items that I just laid out are addressed in a very, very respectful, open dialogue, and we're going to have all the public debate, and members will be able to represent their districts. And that was the whole point of coming up to this building, is representing your districts. So I want them to show up and represent their districts.
What do you say to people who say that the list of items that the governor's laid out, and even some of the Republican priorities in general, as the session wound down and as we enter this special session, what's your response to people who say that these are misplaced priorities, that we should be working more on the grid, making even further improvements, addressing healthcare in additional ways?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, Texas House, I had a healthcare reform package that I thought was very innovative, and much of it got done, and it's actually signed by the governor. We made it kind of mainstream here in the House to talk about healthcare reform. Criminal justice reform is a major goal of mine here as Speaker, that we also made it mainstream and pushed it through both chambers and got it to the governor's desk. Really innovative items. My response to that is we can do much more here in the Texas House than people realize. And in the legislature, we can talk about a myriad of topics and get them done. There's not a limited amount of oxygen in the room. So we did quite a bit on grid reform. We passed some massive changes to the PUC, into ERCOT, more accountability, more reliability, more communication, and we're not done. The governor released a statement this week asking the PUC to do more about generation internally within their own rulemaking authority. And I think that's important because I think we need to give those agencies the opportunity to implement the changes we've made in a very short period of time. And Wes, we're going to be back here in the fall talking about redistricting, because we don't even have the census data yet. So if those who think we've not gone far enough with the grid, let's let the agencies make the changes we've required of them. Let them follow the governor's request, for additional rulemaking authority for additional generation for our coldest months and our hottest months. And then in the fall, we'll be back if we need to make additional changes. There'll be ample opportunity to accomplish more grid security and more added capacity for generation.
The special session lasts up to 30 days. The governor can add items to his call, and he can also bring lawmakers back for more sessions until everything is done. Governor Abbott says he plans to call another special session in the fall to address redistricting and federal stimulus spending. A steady wave of cybersecurity attacks has been targeting businesses and impacting customers. We'll speak to a key player in Congress when it comes to cybersecurity about the work underway now to protect against the next attack. Health insurance companies questioning what your doctor recommends and threatening not to pay. How a new Texas law could reduce prior authorization waits for patients.